I appreciate the opportunity to be here today, talk a little bit about Dancing Along the book from Brené Brown and Dare to Lead. And so we have an opportunity to do a little bit more rumbling today. And it's going to be rumbling with vulnerability. So that's the section that we are in. And we're going to continue on in advancing our knowledge and skill set around two areas. One, in the emotional realm. The title of this section is Shame and Empathy, and we're going to talk about a little bit of emotions, dive in a little bit into shame. We'll talk a little bit about how to navigate emotions that might be in the negative side on the valence, and then talk a little bit more about empathy and the role that empathy has then in being vulnerable and creating connections then with others in our sphere too, and the people that we work with, colleagues, direct reports, and other individuals across the VA enterprise. So as I get started here, I want to introduce one other person to this call, and it's someone that we brought on board here on the Executive Coaching Division, Dr. Kinwana Vanderbilt. If she's on, feel free to toggle on your camera, but if not, that's okay too. I wanted to introduce her. She's shadowing me around some of the activities as part of onboarding and transferring in over from VHA into VBA. So just a warm welcome for her as well. And we'll get dancing on here and start our rumbling in the main event in the ring, and that's going to be with me. So let's get going here. As a recap, Ms. Yu has let us know we've had a couple other presentations as we continue to advance through this book. As we navigate through the chapters, hopefully everyone's keeping pace. I don't know about you. Once I start a book, I like to finish it. So I've already gone through all of it already. So I'm going to back up and present more on where we are right now. So the era indicates where we are in going through this book as a group of leaders. And so you can see we've already covered the moments to miss, the call to courage, the armory, and now diving into shame and empathy. One of the things that you'll note about Brené, she spends a lot of time in talking about connection, vulnerability, and shame's one of those emotions she spent a lot of time on. And the reason why is some of that is part of her background. She is a doctor in social work, and she's done a lot of research in the area of emotions in particular. Shame is one of those things that has come up and resonated very much so with her as part of her work. Her approach to understanding individuals and the way that she conducts her research is through grounded theory. Now, you don't have to know all the ins and outs of that, but one of the things that it does entail is it starts with a lot of interviews to find out different themes. And from those themes, then you start to make some generalizations, to start to organize that. And so in connecting with many individuals and listening to stories and asking questions and listening to answers, one of the emotions that comes up pretty prevalent is this emotion of shame. And so my take on this is it's really hard to put Brené Brown and anything that she does without having this have a component in it. And she embeds this in and dedicates nearly a whole chapter to just this emotion. But the cool thing about it is also to be able to give you some other aspect and concept. We'll talk about empathy. Many are already aware of that, but we'll give it a little bit of different slant of how that comes into play in building connections and trust amongst other individuals. So I'm going to dive right into this. So get ready. We already heard the bell ring. When the bell rings, got to be ready. And one of the things that we're going to focus in on here is the emotional realm. And if you look at it, you've got valence, positive, negative emotions, if you want to label those as such. Some just say emotions are emotions and can be seen as neutral. But we're going to dive a little bit here and talking about maybe more sensitive emotions. Emotions that if you do have any connection with may bring up some type of experience about who you are, self-worth, self-efficacy. So I just want to be mindful of that too as we talk to that. So, do as show up as you can. And just know that some of that there's sensitivities, there's some vulnerability, and even talking about emotions, especially if there's a inclination of connecting with that or connecting with the time. So I honor that. Do what you need to do as we move through this presentation to make sure that you're well and can attend to what you need to attend to. So I'm going to dive right into it. Shame. And I think one of the things that Brené talks a little bit about is, where does this come up in your life? And what pieces of that, when it is evident, what does it show and tell? And the voice inside, what resonates? How she defines it is, it's an intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that one is flawed and therefore unworthy of love, belonging, and connection. So that's a big one. It's a big emotion. And with that, it comes with a heaviness at times. Behind that emotion, oftentimes the thoughts that are involved are around one major theme: never good enough or not good enough. And if you fight through that, what she says is you usually have to contend then is, who do you think you are? There's a question of yourself and your own worth. And you can imagine having that and holding that, what that does to someone as a person. And one of those things that is connected to is isolation, feeling alone with your own thoughts, alone with reflecting on who you are, and a lot of times negative attributes that get associated with that. So the question is for you, as we stay with the same theme as shame, do you experience it? And for reaction, give me a thumbs up for yes, or give me a reaction of a surprise face if no. So take the opportunity to find that little smiley face at the top. All right, give it on. See, I see lots of thumbs. I see a few surprise faces indicating no. All right, who wants to let them know? If you answer no, what does Brené Brown say if you don't experience shame at any point in your time? Ms. Greer, I'll get to you in just a second. Who's read the chapter? What does Brené say if you answer no on this one?
I see a couple comments in the chat, but this is one that if anyone is willing to come on camera and speak up, you are more than welcome to.
All right, in the book. So I know we're all reading it. I hope. Brené indicates if you do not experience shame, you may be or have inclinations of being a sociopath. So take that for what it is. But it's someone who lacks the capacity for empathy and human connection. So you might want to just take a little bit deeper dive to see what that is. And if it's on the realm of the social path, well, we still got some things in here that'll be helpful for you to recognize different emotions, in particular to shame. So we've got some guys that got a hand up here.
We do, Miss Barber.
So good morning. I do feel like I'm not in connection with Miss Brené on this one. I don't feel shame anymore. I feel kind of disappointed in myself, because to me, shame is when you aren't aligned with what your own expectations were of yourself. And I know that difference from what she is putting out there, but I don't feel shame in what I do or don't do anymore. I just feel a sense of disappointment because I didn't do what I had set out to do or I expected of myself at that point.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you coming on and sharing that. And also sharing a little bit of a challenge on, that might not be emotion that resonates with you. I share a similar take too. There's a lot of things, and you'll see when we get to, how she defines or where she thinks or attributes shame to, or lots of things that might be more benign, or lots of other emotions that get attached to that. So disappointment can definitely be one that comes up, that Brené would look at it and ask a few extra questions about, well, what if you're disappointed, how that might lead to more of how you see yourself and being disappointed, and it's quick to have shame attached to that. I would look at it too as shame is more of like those maybe more intense negative feelings. Disappointment, definitely in there. So if you see shame, it's different than disappointment, but definitely, you know, in the same area on that spectrum of emotions. Could be like humiliation could fall in there too. Could be guilt that falls into there too. So definitely, I would say a lot more of a variety of those similar types of emotions could definitely come into play. We got some in the chat too. I felt shame when I burned down my kitchen cooking. You got a few last few sads and a few surprised there. I can definitely see that too. No one wakes up to prepare something in the kitchen to then see that smoke and flames that might be coming up. Okay. Glad it was contained. I would agree. I also look at it as when you look at different emotions, one of the things that I say that comes here too, and we'll get to a piece of why I think she makes a connection is emotions are fleeting. They come and go. At times you'll have them and you have maybe more of a more common one, more that's stable for you. But there was life's and experiences happen. You're likely to experience a range of emotions. And this is a piece where the connection then for shame and other negative valence emotions can come into play. And so even if you don't get stuck there, because you're able to successfully navigate that or do things in order to move beyond them, in her place from shame, integrating in ways that you look at yourself as well as how you view yourself to be able to move through those emotions more quickly. So although they might be present, they don't stick as much. Others, on the other hand, they may stick more and they carry on them with other conversations, maybe in where more typical individuals will let them go and kind of catch and release. They keep them and they stick. And then those have opportunities to be more detrimental, create more isolation and loneliness and other things that might be more negative in their experience in life. So I think it's good conversation here, though, and looking at it. And I say shame here, but I also attach what are some of those other things that might come and go as a leader, the things that you might see in others as you interact with them and supervise and lead that would come up in conversations. So we'll talk about how she outlines 101 in shame, the shame 1, 2, 3s. She postulates that we all have it. We are all afraid to talk about shame. And the less we talk about shame, the more control it has over our lives. I see that there's a lot of it is like shame is one emotion. We all have emotions. Oftentimes, on the darker side of maybe emotions, we don't usually convey those as easily, or they may come out in other ways and means. Maybe it's isolation. Maybe it might be more anger, or different emotions that could get masked by other ones. And it's more about being able to navigate emotions, be able to identify them, be able to work through those, that they become less controlling of you, and can be more beneficial. And so I think this is where the setup of this and the rest of the book comes to, is navigating those. In particular, I like, was it part 4 of the book, where it gives, I think, a lot of practical skills in order to make it up our EQ in this realm, and being able to navigate and be able to leverage emotions more effectively as leaders. So we've had one share here about, shame. Maybe we could go into disappointment too, but she invites people to identify where those things may happen in your life, and we can hear from a couple of people here too on where you do see those, or personally here. And I'll start. You can go into any detail that you want, but I'd like to hear from a couple people. I saw, obviously we got one in the chat there already with the kitchen, but I'll share one for myself. As I kind of looked at the experiences of life and things that I've experienced, I know there's one incident that happened in career where it felt like the dreams, well, I'll step back. It felt like there was going to be an opportunity to collaborate, but what happened is it ended up being an opportunity to be a takeover. So, and in that realm, it's like feeling that you're putting a lot of energy and heart and a lot of grit to bring something to fruition, and then just see it just go away. So I described the experience too of like taking your hopes and your dreams and your aspirations and your visions of what could actually be materialized, and they're put right there in a room that I would identify as like hospice. Where they go, they're not coming back. And in that time, I really thought about myself and what my role was in that. And I was like, man, I can't believe this is done. This is done. Like it's going to go away. And it's like, man, what could I have done better? What could I have done differently? A lot of it is like, got to go bigger, got to get it done quicker. So there's a lot of doubt. And it's like, man, what did I do? What could I have done to prevent that? And it was a pretty intense feeling for a couple of days until I was like, what am I going to do with this? It became less about me and more about how to respond and be able to put something in play to be able to bring those things, those aspirations, hopes, and dreams out of that room and bring them back to life. And so I think it's like that's a movement, right? Of going through an emotion, but also then trying to think what can happen, how to navigate that, not get stuck there. Because it definitely could have been something that stuck a lot more, and it keeps you down. Because I know for those 2 days, I was not feeling anything else really. It was an unproductive 2 days for sure. But on the flip side of that, navigating through that allowed an opportunity to re-strategize, think of different options, put different proposals forward, and then from there, good things started to happen, and even better things happen. But there's a moment though where it did feel dark. There's not a lot of people that connect with you when things like that happen. Or so you might get some of the typical, oh, that sucks. Oh, that's too bad. We'll get to some of that, but that was my experience. I'd say it resonated with me, and left a battle wound in the careers. Let's take a look at some of the chat here. What we got here.
Thank you, Dr. Muhs.
Yes.
I know Miss Eberhardt responded first. I don't know if you're willing to come on camera, ma'am, and say a little bit more about imposter syndrome and your experience of that.
Yes.
And I know it's a lot to come on camera, so no worries.
Can you guys see me?
I can
hear you now.
Me?
I think you'll pop up in just a moment. Yes, ma'am.
Great. So with imposter syndrome, something that I've struggled with throughout the years, and think it's something a lot of people experience. But I always felt like, am I the only one feeling this way? And a few years ago, I was at a leadership training or symposium, and a very respected senior leader shared her own feelings on imposter syndrome. And it really resonated with me in terms of number 3 on this slide, because I felt more seen and more understood hearing her say that, somebody I would not think would struggle with that. So I think her being willing to share that was really empowering for me.
Yeah. So feeling that, sharing it, is moving from isolation. I feel like there's others that can be of support. Okay.
Thank you for that, Ms. Eberhardt. And I know Ms. Clark also chimed in the chat, feeling in relation to how she is with her kids sometimes. I don't know if you or Ms. McCombs too actually said it resonated. If either of you are willing to come on camera and say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, please join us.
I hear you, Ms. Clark.
There
Yes,
you go.
ma'am.
So when I am a little hard with my kids, it's I feel bad, and then I go back and apologize. But I mean, I feel bad that it happened in the first place. So I mean, and growing up, I mean, I don't know how many of your guys' parents apologize to you, but it wasn't very common in my household. But I do make it a point to go back and apologize, when I know I've been too hard on them.
Sure. Then I feel like that the process too is to reflect back, and on that reflection, then you're like, I did this. And so you might be in that moment, right? You might feel shame, you might feel disappointment, maybe discouraged. There's a lot of emotions that get packed in there, but that also then led you to do something, right? And I think that's an important piece, is trying to reconnect to those that might have experienced something that might not have been as ideal as what you wanted it.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Clark. And Dr. Muhs, I can say for myself, having worked at VHA for a long time at the National Center for PTSD, this was something that came up a lot in regards to mental health diagnoses. I have several members in my immediate family who've been affected by mental health issues and addiction issues. And it's heavy. Like, it feels really heavy for people, even, and maybe especially once they're in recovery and making good decisions and building their lives to the place where they want them to be. And unfortunately, that's sometimes where some of my loved ones have felt shamed the most, which is just, for me on the outside, it's like, this is the best time. Your things are going so much better now. Like, now is the time to celebrate and to keep building. But it's hard to work through that. And I felt that, in regards to some of my own experiences too, that sometimes it's like, well, the event is over. Why are you suffering from the experience of it now? But that's just how shame works sometimes.
It certainly can. That's one of those emotions around a few that can really be gripping. Definitely. Well, I appreciate the share here. And I also want to do a quick check-in, because I know this is a point too, when you jump into emotions at work, there's a lot of perceptions on that. Some are like, what a waste of time. Others like, I'm glad we're talking about it. And there's lots of different responses in between there. So for those who are already like, I'm glad we're able to have a conversation on it, you'll probably be in a great spot moving through. Those who think of this as a waste of time, I was there with you at one point. I'm a recovering emotional avoidant, where emotions were distractions, right? Like, be more analytical, be logical. And that was where I approached a lot of my life. We realize, though, as you evolve and you move through, emotions are going to be a part of who you are. They're going to be a part of the workplace. They're going to be alive and well. And so being able to navigate amongst those, not always just shame, there's all kinds of emotions that come up, is really a good asset and a skill to have as a leader. And being able to, what Brené is really about is like being able to connect with others. And we'll talk about that a little bit later too, on the ability to connect with others. And the way to be able to do that, even some like just quick moments, or allow you an ability to build trust, build stronger relationships, and then with that, you can leverage those relationships to even better things that you do, and the things that you accomplish in being a leader. So let's keep moving forward here. Let's take an opportunity to look at how, and this goes back to where Brené talks a little bit about where shame works out. You can look at some of these things that she has listed out and references in the book about where she may see underlying what you see on the outside. It might be more overt, but underneath that, more of a negative valence of emotions, and where she labels as shame could be present in. So lots of things here around perfectionism, gossiping, harassment, bullying, teasing, cover-ups are opportunities where she says in organizations that are filled with negative emotions, more of those shames, many of these aspects will show up more prevalent than in not. And she would say she probably has not seen an organization that does not have shame that's being present or present in individuals amongst organizations. So I guess the question is, that poses, how do you see shame in the workplace, whether it's one of these or something else, from your experience as a leader? And I want everyone to think about this. So I'll take hands, and then I'll just randomly call on someone of the 120 or so-ish people that we have here. You're willing to pass if I call on you, because just in the book, as Brené mentioned, you need to let people move with dignity or move on with dignity. So you can definitely pass, but that way everyone thinks of an answer here as part of this. So how do you see shame in the workplace from your perspective? We'll take hands. So just raise your hand and we'll call you out. So Ms. Clark, your hand's up.
So I don't like think that it's like, I won't say it's like harmful teasing, but I do see teasing.
Teasing. Okay. Okay. Mr. Bracken.
I think shame can sometimes manifest itself in rationalization and showing up as trying to over-explain something that you may not feel incredibly comfortable about how you did something or what you did as a leader.
So rationalize, justify, somewhere in that realm. Okay. Ms. Love.
Good morning. I would see, shame in discrimination in asking for what you need or what the employees need with disabilities, just being shameful of requesting different items that are needed due to shame.
Yeah. There could be some of that underneath, and even knowing that when you're reaching out for that assistance, it may be prevalent, or maybe it may come into being. Sure. Ms. Merchant.
Hello. So because we're HR and we're so siloed, I see shame in the blaming, like, oh, that's not my role. You guys should have done that at this point. And when you get that kind of email, you're like, oh my gosh. So I see that a lot because we are so siloed. I see the blame game happening.
Yeah. Blame game, finger pointing. Absolutely. We've got a couple more here. There's a lot of good hands here. I appreciate that. Thanks for joining us in the space and speaking up. Ms. Garfinella.
For me, I would say it's when you're judgmental, like you've passed judgment and you forget that you don't want to be judged yourself. So don't do it to others. So when that occurs and you want to just kind of slap your hand and say, stop that. Try to see it from their point of view and be more empathetic to it.
And you're right on cue too with judgment. That's coming up here a little bit later, but that certainly has a play in it. Absolutely. Ms. Rutherford.
Good morning. For me, I think I see it show up at work through silence. I think sometimes when we present work or we reach out or we're looking for guidance and you get silence, I think that's a very strong way and it's common way to also make someone feel shame.
The silent treatment. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you for sharing. Mr. Gibson.
I think a big way that it shows up at work is probably comparison, right? Like constantly seeing things that other people may be doing, even in forums like this where people are really good at speaking out and expressing themselves, and you think, oh, why can't it be that person? And not necessarily kind of diminishing your own worth because of things that you see other people doing.
Comparison's a big one. And Brené would agree with you wholeheartedly. All right. Well, I say that's a good round here. Good share of hands. I'm going to pass and calling someone out here because we've got more to cover here. But again, so I think individuals here overall can see different facets that might be listed. And it might not just be shame. Again, there could be other emotions that kind of fall around that emotion that's around those incidents that you described and when they're present. I think a piece of that too is just to know if you got something in play. What Brené talks about is this shame resistance versus shame resilience. And under shame resistance, this is really impossible that you'll be able to basically eradicate it, because it's an emotion. Like many emotions, they're going to come and go. They're going to be fleeting. They're going to exist in some shape or form. So the goal is not to actually just resist it, but become more resilient. So when they have that, I use the phrase of being gripped by an emotion, and it has a stronghold on you. And that resilience for me, then, when I look at that same analogy, is it's not as strong. It's a light grip. It's something that can be easily freed from. With being able to navigate that experience or that emotion. So there's the ability to build resilience. And this is where it comes to the second part of this section, and related to the title then, is in reference to this antidote to shame. And I say the antidote to many things, around negative valence of emotions is really empathy. And I like how she connects this shame resilience to empathy here. There's a shame resilience is the ability to practice authenticity when we experience shame, to move through the experience without sacrificing our values, and to come out on the other side of shame experience with more courage, compassion, connection than we had going into it. Ultimately, shame resilience is about moving from shame to empathy, the real antidote to shame. And I like that. I like the piece of that because with empathy, one of the things that she talks about is to be able to just not connect with one's experience, right? It's connecting to the emotions that underpin an experience, and that's empathy. And I think we can all relate, and we easily relate. And this is where when people are sharing things, or maybe giving more of themselves in the space, is how do you respond to that? And it seems like in some of the examples here, if you respond in a negative way, you might shut people down even more. And then that might just fuel more of that same emotion for that individual. So on a leader's perspective, it's being aware that it's out there and being able to connect on the emotion piece, not just the experience piece, to demonstrate empathy. And then when you have empathy as a leader, you've been able to connect more with those individuals and allow those individuals to feel heard, that you've joined them as part of that positive experience, or experience that you would be able to foster then as a leader. So it is the heart of connection when you demonstrate empathy amongst one another for those who lead. I like the piece that she highlights there too, is empathy is learned. It's a learned skill to be able to do that. And I think part of what she outlines then that we'll dive into is the different skills then to how do you become more effective as a person and become more empathic. And so we outlined 5 skills here, 1 through 5 here. Perspective taking, being non-judgmental, we've already referenced that one. Understand another's feelings, communicate your understanding of that person's feelings, and employ mindfulness, paying more attention to the experience and looking at those. As you look at these skills, most of these are pretty common sense. Some of these are more challenging to demonstrate overall. And I would say a lot of the empathy skills start though with your own ability to be comfortable with emotions and emotions in the workplace. Because again, we're all humans, and if you're breathing, you're likely emoting. And if that's the case, if they're present, you can choose to ignore them, bury them, or talk about them. And again, those are all on scale. If we just always talk about emotions and not the work, my guess is it probably will not feel like you're going to be very successful as a leader. You might have very, very strong connections, but maybe work won't get done. So there's going to be a balance there. But the easiest way to connect with something in our world, in coaching, identifying the emotions, putting them out on the table, although you might not always spend a lot of time there, is a quick win to be able to connect. And that perspective taking is a big piece of that. And even when we try to take perspectives of others, a lot of times we always bring our own view of the world or the situation to that perspective. And it's really hard to separate that. And those that can do it more effectively are truly able to kind of separate themselves to the best they can. I know Brené says you absolutely cannot do that because you are welded to your own perspective. But I think there's a little bit of flex in some of those welds for people who do a really good job of taking perspective. Before they enter, as they're engaging with others, depending on the content that's shared, is to be able to shift from my worldview and what I hold to be true to understanding where your worldview is and being able to accept it as your view, even if it disagrees with mine. So the ability to do that more fluidly is definitely a skill that's attributed to having and being able to be more empathic. Non-judgmental, that one's, I'd say is pretty straightforward. It's very easy to judge, very easy to judge, very hard to stay neutral at times, especially if we're caught up in something or we feel very strongly or passionate about something. And there might be situations where judgment can come more easy if you feel like you're wrong. And you're going to judge, you potentially may be judging others. So kind of showing up and being more neutral is an important piece of empathy. Understanding people's feelings and their emotions. There's a range there too with how comfortable people are with emotions. And their ability to be able to truly identify them and what people are, what you're experiencing is a good laboratory then, and being good there to then be able to see it in the others. And then being able to see it then allows you to connect over that. So a lot of the work then around empathy is about understanding yourself before you start understanding others. So it's a good skill that she identifies, and one that may need some more individual work in order to be truly more effective and demonstrate more empathy. Responding is another piece of it there, skill 4. And that's where a lot of, I think, misses happen. That can happen, is to just gloss over or not recognize that. And again, I would say, as we look at what you can do here, identification of emotions and putting it out there, even if it sounds like you're hurt by this, or sounds like you're really disappointed. I'm going to say in the negative because Brené loves shame and the negative side of it, to be able to get on the table and talk about it. So I'll just stick there. Those emotions are really good to be able to identify then, because again, if you're on the receiving end and someone identifies with your experience, there's an ability to say, that person understands me. And through that understanding builds connection. So even quick connections, even if they're fleeting, can really be important. And then taking time to be more mindful and paying attention. So if you don't attend to emotions, you likely will not see those. And so that's going to be an important piece too, is to keep those in mind. So as you look at these skills, let's talk about one. Highlight these for yourself. Don't have to actually share these now, as be more rhetorical, but identify what's most easiest for you. As you look at these skills, which one do you feel like you're really strong in? And how does that connect to who you are as a leader? On the flip side, which one of these might be more challenging? Maybe get in the way of you truly being more effective in your ability to use empathy and understand it, respond to it. With those, it gives you an opportunity to kind of think where you can continue to reinforce those, where you're strong, but also on the other side of it is to take a look at, for leaders who are always looking to develop in many aspects, is there one or two of those that may be helpful for you to have as a focus point? Let's move on here. On the other side of that, I equate these as like skills that you can do, things that you should do and do more of. And then you have things that you should not do or not do as much of, or try to reduce those. And she references these as misses. For those who follow along in the book, you're going to know that she identifies, I believe, 5 core misses, no, 6 misses. She rewrites these a little bit more in her next book, The Atlas of the Heart. So I borrow from those because I think those are a little bit more straightforward in the way that she describes those. Some of those are duplicate, but I like the way that she outlines these because it's a little bit more user friendly. So sympathy versus empathy. We've heard this. We've talked about this in the past. If you have not seen the clip, and at this point it's like decade plus old, it's a really good animation. She references it in the book, but it's been widely shared and viewed over the years too. And it's a really good story. It's a cartoon there. I got the image. If you haven't seen it though, it's really cool. It's about the fox falls in it, or I don't know who falls in the well. I think the fox does. And what do you do in response to that? Do you stand up on the top and look down and be like, ugh, terrible, oof, not good? Or you actually climb down there and be able to connect over that experience and then be able to navigate that versus create more distance. So sympathy is standing above, empathy is joining that person and connecting around the emotion of that experience. You've got judgment. We've talked about that. I'm not going to spend any more. Disappointment. It's expressing disappointment in others, and the way in which you do that can be an opportunity to trigger those negative emotions, and shame in particular. Discharging discomfort with blame. So we've already talked about blaming others was one that was shared here prior. Minimize or avoid is another one. So you don't recognize that, or you try to shrink that emotion. Comparing, again, we've already talked about that one. This is great. People are good reads and bring those into play, or good observers too of some of these things that were referenced just momentarily, or just recently. Speaking truth to power. So this is what she references is when someone speaks up and stands up for themselves and then gets minimized for that and criticized for doing that when from somebody else. So that could definitely spark shame, other negative emotions, and then advice giving and problem solving. So where you kind of jump over what that emotion is and jump right into trying to fix it. So, and that kind of highlights one thing here is as leaders, and when you're in a position to leverage empathy more so in your role, is to know that when those emotions are present, it's not your job to make things better. It's not your job to fix things. Where a good start is to be able to recognize and be able to respond, to acknowledge that that emotion exists. And that's actually way more freeing than if you have to jump into seeing opportunities to override those, change those emotions. At that point, especially if like someone's coming in and they're talking with you, maybe they're just a little bit more upset. Don't try to move that too quickly, because what happens is you end up discounting that, and it doesn't get resolved, and it festers. It gets bigger. But the moments of expressing empathy and connecting over that emotion, what it might be, allows you to sit a little bit closer. And Brené's really focused too on indicating that you're able to connect over that. And I look at that as an opportunity for us to, as leaders, is to be able to, even if it's quick, to be able to recognize that, convey it back to the individual, and then move forward in that conversation. So as you look at some of those misses, which ones have you experienced and have shut you down in the past? If you can, you certainly can raise your hand. We'll hear for a couple people. You don't have to say the exact same, like the specifics of the scenario, but identify with one of these misses.
Dr. Muhs, just while people are
Yes.
thinking of what they might want to share, I can say for me, it always sort of cuts deep when I say something, and then I know somebody said silence earlier, but sometimes somebody will immediately respond with their own experience, or oh, yeah, I had something just like that. It was this, and they don't really recognize my experience that I've just shared. That definitely feels like a miss to me.
Absolutely. And that's the comparing and compete. Oh, well, let me tell you about my experience. And all of a sudden you just fade away. It becomes them. They're on the platform and stage. Yeah, it definitely creates distance there. No, good share. There was was there a flashing hand there? One up.
I might have
yes, for sure.
seen Miss Clark, but she might have been thumbing that up. And so definitely that seems to be resonating in the chat.
Yeah, and one-upping it for sure.
Ms. Eberhardt said advice giving as well. Sometimes people just want to be heard, but immediately responding with, well, you could do this.
Yeah.
There's Miss Clark. Go ahead and come on, ma'am.
Advice giving, problem solving, I struggle with that too. Not so much, I won't say with work, because I mean in HR, that's our, we're here to problem solve and give advice. But personally, oh my gosh, so I have really toned down that and just listen and just ask, do you want me to, do you want my advice, or you just want to be heard? Or am I just listening? So yeah, because things have gone.
Miss Clark, we need a support group. I do the same thing, and it's more in my personal life. And I actually do the same thing that you are doing, where I ask, how do you need me to show up for you? And that's been really helpful for me to take a step back and not just try to, fix something or, make something better.
Yes.
I think where this conversation is going to is as you see yourself as a leader, a lot of times we are applauded for our ability to fix things and problem solve. And sometimes that's at the individual level as well. You got this, well, here, just do this and you'll be good, right? Do it. It's very easy to come up with solutions too if you've been around the block a few times, you've got good experiences, and you've been able to navigate them yourself to be able to just prescribe. You miss opportunities to connect when you do that. And I think what we're hearing here too, and part of that conversation is try to find more of those opportunities as leaders and leverage some of the information that Brené's to be able to provide us here on connecting with emotions and being more empathic. So all good things here. I'm going to leave you with two things. One is a petri dish. That's my gift to you for 2025. It's an analogy that Brené uses. And look at the petri dish, and what you're swabbing on there is an emotion. And in this case, she likes to go to what emotion again? Shame. So if she's swabbing on shame, there's a couple things that can happen. If you keep it in secrecy, silence, judgment, I put any negative emotion in there as well. It's likely to turn into a little bit more stuff on that petri dish, a little bit more growth. I don't know about you, but I don't think I'd want to be around that one. On the other side, though, if you combine that with empathy, you're going to have a much more positive experience and be able to connect with an individual. And I think the big takeaway here then is to be able to find more moments to be able to connect with people, because it truly is how we navigate the ability to lead others and to be able to be successful is the connections that we're able to foster, whether that's connecting more with ourselves, connecting with our colleagues, connecting with those we lead, connecting with our customers. An important piece there is being able to infuse empathy more in what we do and look to do that in more opportunities so that we can create a greater community amongst us and be able to move more towards greater successes. So if you're into pledges, certainly can pledge yourself, but if you're not ready for that, you don't have to. And I don't like fake pledges either. But as you're looking at moving through this book, there's lots of things that you're going to be able to gravitate towards and capture for nuggets of learning. And I would say if you're not starting a short list of things that you do, this might be one that you capture. How do I do more of this? How do I make this a priority? So pledges might get you into an orientation towards this, but they won't solve it because you have to put actions behind those pledges. But consider this it's a learned skill, and learning takes usually practice. And if you're going to practice, her quote is, screw it up, then circle back to try to fix it, clean it up again, and keep trying. And it's the only way to get better. So just know that we won't be successful in every interaction. We try to be more empathic. We'll definitely do some misses. We may have a list of those that were identified come into play a few times, but we still have opportunities to be able to revisit, reconnect, and continue to move forward. So with that, I'm going to wrap up our rumbling with vulnerability, shame, and empathy, and we'll be carrying on next month until the next section or chapter.
Thank you so much, Dr. Muhs. That was an excellent walkthrough of shame, how it might show up in the workplace, how we might see it or experience it personally, and then some ways that we can work on our antidote of empathy. So thank you very much for that.